What's good, y'all, man? This is the second part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the discovery heard around the world in the 1940s. And I just want you to really just pay attention, just pay attention to what I'm reading, just to find out the authenticity of Scripture within itself, especially the Old Testament, because mostly the New Testament, it really just confirms the Old Testament. And since Jesus came about estimately like 200 years before, no, after, Jesus came 200 years after these Dead Sea Scrolls were found, which is the Old Testament, which when you compare it, read them, watch my first video, once you compare our modern day text to the Old Testament text, you'll find out that 95% is correct. And the Jews have tried to mix up their language and their scriptures to make it look like the prophecies of Jesus never happened. But Jesus did do what he did, and he fulfilled the scriptures. He fulfilled the Old Testament. So this is evidence that supports the authenticity of the Bible. New insights into life, culture, and the time of Jesus, and how the scrolls were found, right? So what are the Dead Sea Scrolls? The Dead Sea Scrolls are a collection of 931 documents discovered over a half century ago in a region of the Judean desert in what is today called the West Bank. The scrolls date from between periods as early as 300 BC to AD 40 and were hidden in caves along the edge of the Dead Sea. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls is the greatest literary and archaeological discovery of our time. The scrolls are not the original documents that make up the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, but they are the oldest copies of those documents that we have today. The Dead Sea Scrolls have shed new light on the practice of the Jewish religion during the periods when the books of the Bible were composed. They have given us a snapshot of the world Jesus ministered in with his 12 disciples, and they have helped us better understand the society in which the early church first started. See, the scrolls are believed to be from the library of a group of first century Jews who separated themselves from the rest of society by living out in the desert at a site known as Qumran. The scrolls contain a variety of writings, portions of every book of the Old Testament, except the book of Esther. One thing about the book of Esther, I've heard that it's possibly apocrypha, so, just do your research. Probably that's why it wasn't a part of the Qumran, like the original manuscripts, the oldest ones. Commentaries on the books of the Bible, rules for religious rituals and community life, texts designed to prepare for the Qumran sect for a war at the end of time, marriage contracts, deeds for sale, calendars, horoscopes, and writings that claim to foretell the future. The texts are composed in 3 languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. They are written on leather parchment made from goat or sheep skins, and papyrus, a form of early paper. One scroll is inscribed on pure copper and is written as the Copper Scroll. It appears to be a treasure map detailing directions to 66 places throughout the Judean desert where immense amounts of gold, silver, and other precious items were hidden. Due to the secretive and mysterious way the texts were written and the loss of identifying physical features in the region today, all attempts to locate the treasure have thus far proven unsuccessful. But forget about the treasure. We really just want to look at the text, because the text shows right here that each book is authentic before Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Everything that Jesus was living out, the exact scriptures that we read today, literally 95% is correct. Like I said in like it's read in here from the old from my last video. So these are the Old Testament books and the number of Qumran scrolls or manuscripts that they found. So the book of Genesis has 24 manuscripts. Exodus 18 manuscripts. Leviticus 18 manuscripts. Numbers 11 manuscripts. Deuteronomy 33 manuscripts. So that's the Torah or the Pentateuch. Prophets. So you got Joshua, they have 2 manuscripts of those. Judges, they have 3 manuscripts of that. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 4 manuscripts of that. And then the 1st and 2nd Kings, they have 3 manuscripts. Then you got Isaiah, they have 22 manuscripts. Jeremiah, 6 manuscripts. Ezekiel, 6 manuscripts. And then the 12 minor prophets, you got 10 manuscripts of those. Psalms 39. Proverbs has 2. And Job has 6. The Song of Songs has 4. Ruth has 4. Lamentation 4. Ecclesiastics 4. Esther has 0, but remember that could be Apocrypha. I heard that. Daniel 8. Ezra and Nehemiah has 1 in 1st and 2nd Chronicles. So the total here is 231, right? And when adjusted is 223. So every single book except the book of Esther in the Old Testament, according to the findings, are authentic. From like it basically shows that that over time these scrolls were actually legit. We have the same ones now. In 1946, shepherds of Tahamareh Bedouin tribe settled in a desert area between Bethlehem and the Dead Sea, where they tended their flocks and herds. According to local heresy, a teenager by the name of Muhammad Ad-Hudihib, Muhammad the Wolf, went in search of a stray goat, believing it to have wandered into one of the caves that honeycombed the limestone cliffs. He threw a rock into the cave to scare it out. Instead of hearing the bleat of a goat, he heard the sound of breaking pottery. He climbed up into what is called Cave 1 and found ancient clay storage jars filled with 7 scrolls. 4 of these scrolls were sold in Bethlehem to an antiquities dealer known as Kondo. He in turn sold them for $97.20 to the Archbishop of the Monastery of St. Mark's in Jerusalem. The Metropolitan, a high official in the priesthood of the Syrian Orthodox Church, Mar Athanaeus, Yesheu, Samuel, the other 3 were sold to Faidi Salah, another antiquities dealer in Bethlehem, who in turn sold them to Hebrew University professor Eliezer Sukenik in Jerusalem. The Bedouin shepherds searched more caves, bringing most of their finds to Kondo. Meanwhile, the Metropolitan permitted John Trevor of the American Schools of Oriental Research to publish news and photographs of the find to the world in April 1948. Soon after, British archaeologists conducted a careful survey of the region and discovered several other caves with scrolls, including those also at Terence at Qumran. Of course, Cave 4 yielded approximately 15,000 fragments, representing some 600 manuscripts. These were not found in storage jars, but beneath the cave floor, indicating a rapid burial because of the impending danger. perhaps the Roman invasion of the Jewish territory in AD 68 that led 2 years later to the complete destruction of Jerusalem. So maybe Jews from AD 68 that were running away from the Roman destruction went to these caves and, literally put all of these manuscripts inside the caves to save them. Cave 7 was also unique in that it contained the fragments of 19 texts in Greek, the same language used to write the New Testament. When the Arab-Israeli War broke out in 1948, the Metropolitan took his 4 scrolls to the United States and offered them for sale in an ad in the Wall Street Journal. Yajael Yadin, an archaeologist and the son of Professor Sukenik, anonymously purchased the scrolls for the state of Israel for $250,000. Later, these 4 scrolls and 3 others were put on public display at the Shrine of the Book, a museum built in Jerusalem, especially for the scrolls. The State of Israel also houses other scrolls in a climate-controlled basement of the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem. Some scrolls are located in other countries, such as the Copper Scroll in the Citadel Museum in Amman, Jordan. Many of the scrolls were found in caves 4 through 10 along the terrace known as Qumran, where archaeologists were quickly to notice ancient ruins of buildings because the caves would have only been accessible via the Qumran Plateau. Archaeologists began to investigate a connection between the scrolls and the site. Archaeologist Roland Duvaux supported the connection with his discovery of pottery kilns that were used to fire the scroll jars, and with his excavation of 2-story building that contained the remains of written benches and inkwells. Roland Duvaux in the 1950s, Yitzhak Magen in the 1990s, and Randall Price as recently as 2005 have uncovered deposits of animal bones overlaid with sherds, broken pottery. The Dead Sea Scrolls speak of ritual meals, and several scholars contend that the name bone deposits that were found buried in a ritual manner are the remains of these ritual meals. Some scholars believe that the site of Qumran may have been originally the biblical city of Salt, mentioned in the list of cities in this region in Joshua chapter 15, verse 61 and 62. Scholars have suggested the following timeline for the historical development of Qumran. There appears to have been 2 main phases, one beginning in the time of the Jewish king Alexander Jannaeus in 134 through 104 BC, and containing until a destruction of buildings and the settlement of 31 BC, and the final phase in the late Second Temple period, 4 BC to 1 BC, until the destruction in the site of AD 68 by the Roman army's response to the first Jewish revolt of AD 66 through 73. Therefore, for a short time, the site was turned into a Roman garrison. So if I were you, I would go watch my other video because it talks about how these scrolls even talked about Jesus Christ. And obviously it supports all the prophecies that are in the Bible, which I'll make some stuff about. But I really want to just suggest this, like, really study this right here. The archaeologist Roland Duvaux supported the connection with his discovery of pottery kilns that were used to fire the scroll jars, and with his excavation of a 2-story building that contain the remains of written benches and inkwells. So you remember, it's the archaeologist Roland de Vaux. He found something. He found like this building during in the temple, and this temple was King Herod's temple, and it was a temple where they would make scrolls, and they would lay down the bench and they would roll it up with something, and he found out how from there that's where they took it in about like 300 BC to 200 BC, whatever. They took those scrolls and brought them there because they didn't want the Romans, possibly the Romans, that might have been the reason to, destroy everything. So they wanted divine intervention for it. So, watch my first part of this video, man, but that was the story of the Qumran scrolls. And definitely they're a big hit. It's a big deal because it really proves that the Bible is authentic. So man, just check out my other videos if you want, and then do your own research. And then this is a clue. I just want